After nearly 3 decades of civil war, the attainment of independence in July 9, 2011, the Republic of South Sudan was supposed to herald the realization of big dreams for the people of the new republic and beyond the borders. Having stomached the devastations of war for decades with no reasonable infrastructure, South Sudanese had a big dream of blossoming infrastructural development and exploration of her rich natural resources, key being oil, for the benefit of her population, and brings happiness to the tired but radiant voices of her sons and daughters after many years of pain and sufferings.
This result is the crowning moment of all the sacrifices made during our long struggle. As a people, you have chosen the path to permanent peace. You have chosen the path to human dignity. And you have chosen the path to nationhood.
For the liberation heroes who had taken to the bush to fight for the long hard-fought freedom, it was a time to reap the fruits of their struggle of freedom and independence. Barely 2 years later, the flames of hope and excitement that marked the independence of South Sudan is waning fast.
We were expecting that our government was going to embark on provision of social services, such as building of hospitals, building of schools, physical infrastructure such as roads, so that our people can really realize and be able to get the dividend of peace through the provision of these social services.
We didn't expect all these corruptions. Yeah? We didn't expect people to buy wealth abroad. We just expected people to invest in the country. We did not expect our leaders to be like the way they've been. They've disappointed us.
There has been a tremendous resolve among the South Sudanese population to build a viable state despite the odds that seem to be pushing their country into a prolonged and ugly, if not totally unnecessary, civil war.
We were fighting for 2 decades, more than 2 decades. I mean, again, it's the northern nomenclature system of government. And after we succeed, really we were expecting a peaceful living, because that's what we want, and that's what we were advocating for.
Sadly, members of the various ethnic groups are retreating into tribal cocoons. The love and the brotherhood that bind the Southerners is at risk.
No government should be allowed to use tribes against tribes in order to remain in power.
The nation is more greater than any individual. The nation is greater than any politician perspective thinking of ideologies. That does not really allow, that does not care of humanity. I am appealing for both sides of government and the opposition to come together to end the violence. Instead of killing innocent civilian population, we did not want, it is enough, and we don't want any more war.
The ruling Sudanese People Liberation Army seems to be in shambles, with its command seemingly in a free fall. The perceived failure by the government to maintain cohesion by lack of a good formula to balance power within the SPLA has heightened tribal tensions.
I think there was need for wider consultations, because that is the way movements, and particularly freedom movements, because it is SPLM that brought freedom to the Republic of South Sudan. It was not the Dinkas and the Nuers, it was SPLM. But the most important thing is every minute that goes by, and every minute that sees the death of a Southern Sudanese, whether a Dinka or a Nuer, is a wasted minute.
The SPLA, which fought for the liberation of the new republic, is struggling with various challenges of political insurgencies, inter-ethnic conflicts, widespread corruption, underdevelopment, and extreme poverty. The current conflict pitting government forces against pro-Dr. Riek Machar's forces can be traced back to when President Salva Kiir dissolved his entire cabinet that included the then Deputy Dr. Machar and the Comprehensive Peace Agreement negotiator ex-Secretary General Pagan Aman. However, Kiir justified the sacking, saying he wanted to have a lean government that would adequately provide basic services to the people.
Some colleagues forgot about the SPLM fundamental principles. They got spoiled by the luxuries of office and forgot we were servants of the people. We cannot honor the sacrifices of our people and the martyrs by squandering its wealth through corruption and mismanagement of these resources. This is one among the reasons which explain the changes which I made recently in the executive. The nation expects us to deliver. I also wanted to remind you that it is not a right to be in the government. It is just a privilege to serve the people of this country who supported us throughout, thick and thin.
The president appoints his cabinet and he decides who to keep and who not to keep. Yeah, but I think coming from a war that had lasted 21 years, I believe both Salva Kiir and Riek Machar should have found a more amicable solution to the political differences.
The move by President Kiir was viewed as an attempt to neutralize some ruling Sudanese People Liberation Movement party members who had declared interest in the presidency in the scheduled 2015 elections.
Dr. Riek spoke of internal democracy within the movement. And he was not alone. Others announced the intention to vie for the presidency. Perhaps it was difficult for him to appreciate the implication of that decision. So I can imagine the tension that statement created. I would have done it slightly differently from the way Dr. Riek handled it, because he was a serving vice president. Yeah. So clearly, President Salva must have felt undermined by his own vice president. And when this happens, clearly, people are likely to take different directions. But President Salva could also have called them into serious meetings and discuss, and really discuss with them.
The action by the president was not entirely surprising, as Dr. Machar had accused him of abrogating the national constitution and the SPLM rules and procedures by relieving democratically elected governors arbitrarily.
Some of our comrades have come out to challenge my executive decisions. I must warn that this behavior is tantamount to indiscipline, which will take us back to the days of the 1991 split. We all know where the split took us from that time. This could jeopardize the unity and the independence of our country.
The supporters of the former vice president view his removal from government as calculated to deprive and marginalize them. According to analysts, the decision to ouster of Dr. Machar fueled ethnic tensions in the country that exploded into full-scale tribal flare-ups on the 15th December 2013 following an alleged attempt coup by rebel forces loyal to Dr. Machar.
And President Salva fired the vice president, and when he did, he also said he's not afraid of facing him at the ballot. You see, if the Republic of South Sudan was slightly 10, 20 years old into democracy, I'm sure that some of the systems, like we have in Kenya, checks and balances, would have helped the situation. But are those Nuers who felt, now you have fired our man, so we are taking arms? And they don't care a thing about democracy. All they know is Dr. Riak has been fired. And you have a problem. But the worst bit is the moment you have a divided national army, then you have a real problem. Because the army normally is always the custodian of the security of the country.
Other accounts attribute the cause of conflict to the president's key remark at the National Liberation Council (NLC), during which he referred to the 1991 split within the SPLA, where infighting was commanded by Dr. Machar.
We might not have fought the liberation war to its logical conclusion, but we led our people in a war of liberation for 21 years with conviction, determination, and heroism that won us not only the freedom, but also recognition and credibility internationally and even from our own enemies. Inevitably, the path of struggle was very difficult. Along the way, some comrades abandoned the struggle and others even joined the enemy. This was inevitable, but with all this, the struggle continues despite the setback imposed on us by some of the comrades therein mentioned.
Unfortunately for the government of South Sudan, Dr. Machar and the international community led by the US dismissed the coup allegations and called on both feuding sides to pursue peaceful political solution to the conflict.
There was dispute within the presidential guards. Are the presidential guards in Jogule? Are they in Awil? Are they anywhere? The Kulu presidential guards? That is a clear case of a coup. And Riek Machar goes on to call upon the army to rebel against the system. And you still call it, you don't recognize it to be a coup. Then what is a coup?
Effectively, the South Sudan train of liberation seems to have veered off the rail. Chinua Achebe would have most likely captured the South Sudan situation by simply saying, as things fall apart, the Falcon cannot listen to the Falconer. So what next for President Kiir, Dr. Machar, and the South Sudanese in general?
Since the parties are now in negotiation, the president should be persuaded enough to also release the remaining detainees, and that will really open the ground further for more collaborative efforts towards resolving this problem.
Riak and Salva should sit down and agree on something, yeah? If there should be a coalition, it's fine, but as long as we don't die, we don't expect more deaths.
Despite receiving little attention from the Western government, the South Sudan government received support from the African Union and countries in the East African region in particular. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has committed his military to deal with rebel forces. The troops were key in the recapture of the two key towns of Bor and Malakal.
Let it be known that we in IGAD will not accept the unconstitutional overthrow of a democratically elected government in South Sudan. Violence has never provided optimum solutions. It is also an unacceptable threat to regional peace and security. There must therefore be an immediate cessation of violence.
The priority is not a coalition government. The priority is not president stepping down or getting out or whatever. Because as I said, nobody denies the fact there's a government in place. And then there's now a proper rebel movement. The hardening of the attitudes is a major problem.
The presence of Ugandan troops is proving to a greater hindrance to the Addis Ababa peace talks. Delegates of South Sudan rebels have demanded the immediate withdrawal of the troops, with Dr. Machar insisting that the hostilities between his forces and those of his rival will persist unless the Ugandan forces are withdrawn, political detainees released, and a state of emergency lifted.
In my opinion, it should not affect the negotiations because already this support was sanctioned by IGAD, and there were genuine concerns that were raised, especially the guarding of important institutions like the airports and others. Of course, heads of states and government have a right to both self-defense and collective self-defense. And so it should not be seen negatively, rather it should be seen in the spirit of stabilizing the situation. And therefore, I think Uganda should understand that there are certain limits as dictated by IGAD. And so it should not affect the negotiations.
The Ugandan government has, however, vowed to keep her army in South Sudan until the country regained stability, a situation that may help or worsen the situation in the country.
Sovereign nations have the freedom to act the way they do, because you must remember that, like Kenya, Uganda shares a border with the Republic of South Sudan. And instability in that new republic now is instability for Uganda, for Kenya. This is a reality. So I can understand the frustration of Uganda. But having said that, we cannot wish away negotiations. I don't myself believe in military solutions to national problems. But yet I cannot question, I said, I cannot question that wisdom. Because they must have looked at their own national interest. That's how countries operate. Remember, there's nothing permanent in international relations. What is permanent is national interest.
The fierce fighting between the pro-government forces and those loyal to rebel leader Dr. Machar, centered on attempts to protect oil-fields, have led to the deaths of over 10,000 South Sudanese citizens.
I'm in a Kenyan school, it's an international school, and people in school, like we have people from different countries, and you hear Ugandans are saying Ugandans have died in South Sudan, Kenyans have died. It's not like we wanted this to happen, but you know, in some way it's like they're trying to say your people killed our people, so we don't feel good, you know. We feel like, yeah, but there's nothing we can do about it. We feel guilty, we feel like, yes, our people also died, but it's in our country, so.
I've lost so many people, our colleagues, brothers and sisters, which we did not, which we were not expecting to happen again, because we have really come from a very long way, and we have really suffered enough. We didn't expect to suffer again after gaining our independence.
However, there is a glimpse of hope as the international community